I think investors were expecting a little bit more of a subdued outlook for the second fiscal quarter, primarily just due to typical little bit of conservatism for management, but also, the February ended quarter tends to be a little bit more seasonally weak. You get the December portion of that, but usually consumer products, PCs and smartphones tend to see a little bit of a sequential decline just off of strong holiday seasonality. We all kind of knew that pricing was going to be the most important factor going into the quarter, and obviously demand from AI is pretty strong. But there are areas like high bandwidth memory where Micron's actually somewhat constrained in terms of their ability to supply, just simply because they haven't invested in that much additional capacity, and they need to improve yields, and they're transitioning over from HBM3E to 4, which is to support NVIDIA's next architecture and other customers. So there's a few factors going on here that I think had investors a little bit more maybe conservative in terms of what they were expecting.
I don't know a lot about semiconductors, and I want to keep it that way. But what I do know is it's a cyclical business. Has this AI spending thing kind of evened out the cycles, or just throw the cycles out the window?
It's a little unprecedented. I don't think that we're necessarily at that point where we can say that there aren't going to be cycles, or at least not in the next, I don't know, call it 5-10 years, something like that. Typically what we see with memory, I'll just focus on that specifically. We tend to see something like 7 to 10 quarters, about 2 years plus of up cycles. And then what happens from there is that we tend to see some sort of cyclical decline, and that really is because of supply ending up being a little bit more supply growth relative to demand growth. AI is structurally limiting some of that. We're seeing AI inferencing demand being really strong. That's both for DRAM and NAND. At this point, DRAM is more important for Micron. It's a much larger percentage of their sales, and that's where high bandwidth memory is included in their revenue. And so what this does to the cycle, it's definitely extending it. It's elongating what we would expect, and it's making it a lot more difficult for investors, I think, to capture what will be the ultimate peak of the cycle. But on the other hand, we have to look at what's happening with pricing. If customers like PC, smartphone, automotive, run the gamut, if they can't get supply, someone's going to need to meet that, which means that Micron or their peers are going to at some point need to expand capacity. They're kind of working on it. They hinted at it with the additional capex increases for the fiscal 26 going up from 18 to 20 billion. But it's just a question of how fast and to what magnitude can they actually increase capacity.
Right. And I'm glad you bring that up, because we know that the industry is shifting production to the more advanced technology for AI data centers, and therefore there's a shortage now of this less sophisticated memory chips for PCs. Doesn't that mean that Micron has the upper hand when it comes to Dell or HP, and they can call the shots more? I mean, what does a Dell, what does an HP do then if they can't get what they need? Yeah,
it's complicated. So Micron has to decide how they want to allocate that capacity that they have, whether that goes to PC. I think that when you're a larger customer like Dell, HP, you kind of have to just take the product at the price that Micron is offering it. Now, I do think if you could buy in larger volumes, you can, mitigate some of those price increases. But at the end of the day, you're kind of you're being dictated by the market demand, the market forces. But also, when prices have declined in the past, PC makers have also benefited from that. Yeah. So if there is a cyclical decline, which I expect to happen at some point, they'll also benefit from a decline in memory pricing as well.
Where does Micron manufacture its chips?
Yeah, so it's primarily in Taiwan, but also in Japan as well. And they have a fab in Manassas, Virginia, but they're also expanding now to Boise, Idaho, and they're eventually going to bring a fab online in New York. So it's pretty geographically diverse.
Where in New York? Do we know?
Clay, New York.